What is up, guys? Welcome to another video, and today is going to be something a little bit different. It is a review, but I do have some Halo books I want to show you. But we are reviewing the 20th anniversary 4-pack for the World of Halo series. This has been on my radar ever since it's been announced, but I did pick up some books at a local game exchange. Here we have Halsey's Journal. I don't know if this did come with the collector's edition of Reach, but I own it now. Here is a kind of, it's not really a guide, it's more of a kind of like a little encyclopedia for Halo 3. It goes over some of the species in the Covenant, the Sangheili. It goes over humanity, funny enough, but it's a very little cool thing. And then we have the official guides for Halo 2 and 3, and a poster was included in 3, which I will show you later. And then we have the Legendary Edition guide for Halo Reach, which is really cool. It goes over a lot of things in the game, multiplayer campaign, and in the very end of the book is a lot of concept art, so we get to see a lot of cool ideas and concepts for the campaign of Halo Reach. And we do get to see some of the early concepts for Noble Team, which I think is very cool. But as you can see, it goes over elites as well. There's a lot that was going to be in the game, or at least was thought of to go into the game. I wish that did go into the game. Reach is still a really good game, still my second favorite Halo game, but there's a lot of cool concepts. And here we have concept art for Noble Team, very cool. Marines, ODSTs, just so much cool artwork for Halo Reach. Arguably it is my second favorite Halo game. But the official guide for Halo 3 has a really cool poster that, funny enough, has not seen the light of day until now. And what I think is really cool is that this book was bought sealed, so it has not been opened once since 2007, and I think that just adds some value to the poster, and I do kind of want to get it framed. And those were just some books that I picked up that I wanted to share with you guys, but now we can actually move on to the review. Getting into the goods, here is the 20th anniversary 4-pack, 2 Grunts, 2 Master Chiefs, one half is Combat Evolved, the other is Halo Infinite. And when we get to the back of the box art, it is the same box art that we saw on the Spartan Collection 2-pack. And just like that 2-pack, I am getting this 4-pack for the Combat Evolved side of things, but the only figure I do already own out of this 4-pack is the Halo Infinite Master Chief, so I get a Grunt conscript as a bonus. And first impressions, taking everything out of the box, everything's looking good visually, so let's get right into it. Kicking things off with the Combat Evolved side of the 4-pack with Master Chief. Head articulation does feel a little limited. As you can see, I am bending his visors on the top of his helmet to just move his head, which is no bueno. But getting into the arm articulation, there's a lot of range of motion in his arm around the shoulder area, which feels very nice, very smooth. And the same could be said for the elbow articulation. He can bring his elbow up pretty well, nothing too crazy there, and he can even rotate his elbow 360 degrees. And his wrist articulation is also very well. It can, rotate 360, and it can bend up and down all around, which is not a bad thing at all. Torso articulation feels very limited because of the pouches and stuff. It's just he can't do a 360, and he can't even really do an ab crunch, which is very unfortunate. But that was the same issue on the Spartan Collection figure, so not really too surprised. And then leg articulation is phenomenal. He can rotate his thighs 360 degrees. He can do a really good butt kick, unlike the Spartan Collection version of the figure. He can do almost a complete split, which is very nice, and just flexing that leg articulation again. And the feet articulation are really good. He can bend his foot pretty much however you want without it feeling like it's gonna break off. It just feels really nice. Very happy with the articulation on this figure. So while recording the head articulation for the Grunt, I accidentally fucking snapped his head off. It just snaps, and I'm so fucking pissed because this guy was one of the reasons why I wanted this 4-pack. I was like, oh, Combat Evolved stuff, I love Combat Evolved, and I fucking ripped it off. I'm pissed. So head articulation aside, the arm articulation is actually really nice. It's about the same principles for Master Chief. The shoulder area, you can kind of bend and move his arm however you want, and the same could be said in the elbow area. And the hand articulation is the same principle as Master Chief's as well, but because it's a big Grunt hand, it kind of is limited, or it feels a little stiff, I'll give it that. But the articulation feels really limited because of how big it is. And then getting into the leg articulation, it feels really solid. It's about the amount of articulation and flexibility that the arms have, which is really nice, and the feet articulation is really nice. They didn't just give him stubs. You can actually move his feet around, so if you want to do different poses, you can do that, which is something that I really like about these World of Halo figures. And then getting into the torso articulation, you can kind of do a 360 if you push it enough. You're not going to compromise the figure by doing that, but you do have to push in order to get him to do a 360, and you can kind of do a crunch. It's there, nothing too crazy. Getting into the infinite side of things with Master Chief, head articulation is better because his chest piece and helmet are not clashing, so he can look up, down, all around. You know, good stuff with head articulation. And then getting into the arm, that shoulder piece actually does limit some of the shoulder articulation, but he can do a 360. And the forearm articulation, or elbow I should say, the elbow articulation doesn't feel as good. He can't bring his forearm as much as CE Chief can. And then the hand articulation is pretty much the same, you know, 360s, able to bend his wrist however you want. Torso articulation is a little bit better on this figure because he doesn't have pouches on his stomach limiting the articulation. It still feels really limited, like he can't really get too much of an ab crunch, but it is much better than CE Chiefs. And then when we get to the leg articulation is just the same as Combat Evolved Chiefs. You can do a 360 on the thighs. He can do a full butt kick if you were so inclined to have him do so. And then the the foot articulation is really good. You can pretty much just bend it however you want, pose it however you want. And I think that is a staple in these 3 3/4 inch Halo figures. That is something I'm starting to realize. This is my first time reviewing these figures on the channel. I don't really collect them, so I wouldn't have known until now. But moving on to the next figure. So getting into the Grunt conscript, you know, his head doesn't fucking pop off. It actually has better head articulation than the CE Grunt before I popped his head off. He can look up and down. He can kind of do a side to side, but his head does clash with the backpack piece, which is a little unfortunate. Then arm articulation, very similar to the Combat Evolved Grunt. He can move his shoulder however you pretty much want it to. 360s, you can, you know, it's on a ball joint, which is really nice. And the forearm or elbow, I don't know why I'm mixing them up today, you know, 360, bend it however you please. And then the wrist articulation, same thing as the Combat Evolved Grunt. It feels a little limited because the hand is clashing with the wrist or the end of the forearm. And then getting into torso articulation, he can't do a 360 at all, because I guess he has more armor around that region of his body. And then the leg articulation is really similar. One issue I did have is on his right foot. It didn't really want to move. It just kind of, oh no, it did want to move. It's the left foot I'm referring to, I'm sorry. But his foot was able to move just like how the Combat Evolved Grunt's foot did, despite the left foot kind of not wanting to move. I did loosen it, so I'm not gonna dock points on Jazware for that. But yeah, that's pretty much what the articulation for all the figures, and let's move on to some more in-depth discussion. Just kidding, we have to go over accessories first, starting off with Combat Evolved Master Chief's Assault Rifle. Now, if you've seen my 20th anniversary Spartan Collection 2-pack review, you already know what I'm going to say about this assault rifle. I do prefer the original over the anniversary rendition of the assault rifle. Now, I don't think that this model is bad at all. It looks like the Halo 3 one, and I like the Halo 3 assault rifle. There's just something iconic and just aesthetically pleasing about the original assault rifle model from Combat Evolved that just makes me like it over this rendition of the assault rifle. I don't know, personal preference, but I think Jazware did a really good job with the sculpting and painting. There are 3 different shades of gray, the little green dot on the side, and black for the barrel and the flashlight. There is no blue for the ammo counter, but just the paint job on this is really good. Like, it really shows how much care Jazware did put into this weapon. And there is a little peg on the side, so you can't put this on Master Chief's back. But overall, I think Jazware did a really good job at recreating this rifle. Next is the Combat Evolved Plasma Pistol, and funny enough, this is based off the original Combat Evolved model. I don't know why they didn't do that for the assault rifle, but here they are doing it for the plasma pistol, which I am not complaining at all. And I have to say, I'm very impressed with the amount of detail that went into this. Like, there's the purple, there's the green, the yellow, and the gray, and the sculpting is phenomenal. Like, on the hand, they did the sculpting on the handle, and because your figure is going to be holding this, you're not going to see that, yet they still did it. I'm very impressed with how in-depth Jazware went with this pistol, and I'm very happy to see I'm just happy to see it. Like, it's awesome. For our third accessory is the Halo Infinite Assault Rifle, and it seems like they're making a change to all the assault rifles. It started with the Spartan Collection Assault Rifle with the 20th anniversary 2-pack, and it seems like that change to the assault rifle is seen here, where instead of it being dark gray and gray, it's black and gray, and honestly, I don't mind it. It makes that yellow stripe pop out more, and even though there's less colors on the assault rifle, there is still care gone into it. As you can see, the is painted there, so they could have just done that portion of the rifle all black. It would have been easier, but just them painting that ejection port shows how much care and detail Jazware did put into this. And there is a peg on the side, so you can put this on Chief's back, and overall it's just another good recreation of the assault rifle. And up last is the Halo Infinite Plasma Pistol. Now, the sculpting on this looks really well. I have no complaints when it comes to the sculpt. The purple is good, the green is good. What I don't understand is the silver, because in the game where the silver is on the toy, it's supposed to be like a dark gray, not black, but like a dark gray. So I don't know why it's like silver. I'm not gonna be like act all entitled and be like, as the customer, I should get the best service and it should be dark gray, it's ruined. No, I'm not gonna be like that. It's just an inaccuracy that I've noticed, and I'm not gonna be hypercritical. It's an inaccuracy. That's what it is. Take it at face value, because overall the sculpt and the rest of the paint job is solid on Jazwares. I just don't know why they're silver. Alright, with accessories out of the way now, we can have that in-depth discussion about the figure, starting with Combat Evolved Master Chief. And I can say that there isn't that many issues I have with this figure. There's only two in particular, and that would be the articulation in the head and torso region of the figure. It feels stiff and very limited, where that's it. Articulation everywhere else feels really good. Nothing feels like weird, stiff, or too loose. It all feels nice and fluent. The painting and sculpting is really good. Nothing feels inaccurate. It all looks good when comparing it to images of Combat Evolved Chief, whether it's the remaster or the original. The weapon that he comes with, though, I prefer it were a different model of assault rifle, the original one obviously, but despite that, the paint job and sculpting is still really good. Like, I have to give Jazware credit. They did put a lot of care into crafting this figure, and the weapon included. It is very clear how much effort they did put into this figure, and it pays off. Very good job, Jazware. And moving on to the Grunt. So I'm not going to dock points for the head ripping off. That is completely my fault for being a big dumb ape and just, not being careful. But one thing, that I actually kind of don't like about this figure, that is, that doesn't have to do with me ripping its head off, is the paint job around his armor. It is all orange with that tan circle, and if we look at a picture of a Combat Evolved Grunt, there's, grays, blues, blacks, there's all these other colors, and that's just not seen here. So I did a little modifying to make the figure look a lot more game accurate. I didn't go too crazy. I just wanted to add some color to it to make it, stand out more and, like I said, look more game accurate. But I didn't go too crazy. All I really did was use Gundam markers. Obviously, I did silver as like the base layer, and then I added, black detailing. And it's really hard to see, but there are like 3 blue dots on that like black oval. Yeah, but even if you won't see that, I'm happy to know that I did that. It just, knowing that it's there makes me happy. And I'm actually very happy with how it came out overall. I think it looks really good. There are some things that I didn't address, but I wasn't trying to make this like the most, screen accurate figure. I just wanted to add some color to it to make it pop and stand out, and I think I did a good job at that. So overall, despite me ripping off its head and a lack of detail when it comes to the paint job on the armor, I think that this is a very solid Grunt figure. It's pretty much, if you own one, you own them all in the sense of articulation. And I'm very happy to see Jazware address the older games, especially Combat Evolved, because I don't think we've gotten a Combat Evolved figure in a very long time. And I'm actually really happy to see that it's a Grunt as the first Covenant figure to make a comeback from that game. I hope the next figure they do are Elites, and then Jackals, and then God knows if they'll ever do Hunters. But it's good to see Jazware do a callback to some of the more classic older Halo games, and I hope they keep it up. Good work. So moving over to the Infinite side of things, starting off with Master Chief, there are only really two issues I have with this figure, starting off with torso articulation. Despite there being some more range of motion in that area, it still feels very stiff and limited, and the only other issue I can really think of is with the shoulder pads. He can't really bring his arms up all the way, like if you're trying to make him like flap his arms or whatever. I don't know how I'm trying to explain it, but those shoulder pads do clash with the armor sometimes, which is not necessarily a deal breaker, but it's still a little unfortunate to have his own armor restrict his movement. But besides those two little issues, the articulation is great. It's just as good as the Combat Evolved Master Chief, so it's just another really well done figure. And the painting and sculpting is also really good. I don't really see any inaccuracies, and I think they just did a really good job at executing this figure. And the same goes for the weapon. I think that the weapon is sculpted well, and like I discussed when going over it, it was painted really well, and it shows that a lot of care was put into it. With this 4-pack, I can really see Jazware really stepping up their game when comparing these figures to Wave 1 figures. So good job, Jazware. For our last figure is the Grunt Conscript, and I genuinely do not have any problems with this figure at all. I think the articulation is solid for a Grunt figure. I think that they did good with the painting and sculpting, and the backpack, unlike the Combat Evolved Grunt, has grays and blues, so there's detail when it comes to the paint job, let alone sculpting of the backpack. I think they did good with the head articulation. It can actually move around, and I'm not going to accidentally break it off. And I think they did a good job with the scales around the hand and the feet area. I just think overall they did a really solid job with this figure, and I have no complaints with it at all. I think this is just awesome on Jazware's end. Here's one family portrait of all the figures included in this 4-pack, and before we go into the outro, I just want to do some size comparisons because those are always fun. So starting off, here is everyone next to the Warthog, then here's everyone next to a Ghost, and here's everyone again next to the Ghost but just at a different angle, and here are the CE figures next to some Infinite figures, then here are the Infinite figures next to those same figures, and here they are next to some McFarlane Reach and Foreground, and then here they are next to a McFarlane Combat Evolved Master Chief, and here they are next to their Spartan Collection counterparts, which I do have a review on, so if you haven't seen that, go check that out if interested. And that's pretty much everything I have to say about these figures. I think Jazware did a really good job at executing them, and I think that this is a really cool 4-pack, and if you do see it in stores, I would pick it up. It's only $40, so $10 per figure. That's not bad, and I really hope Jazware keeps up the great work that was seen in this 4-pack. And I actually had a lot of fun making this video. I tried changing some things up. I hope my microphone sounds a little bit better. I didn't realize how far away from the mic I actually was and just how distant I sounded, so hopefully that the quality of my microphone sounds a lot more crispier. And I had fun making this video, and I usually have fun making all my videos, but this one was a little refreshing. I know that I kind of went on a hiatus because of COVID, and I still have a review to release. I'm still waiting on the thumbnail. I think this is like the second video I'm mentioning that in, and the video has been made. I'm just stingy and I want to wait for everything about the video to be done, so that includes the thumbnail. So hopefully that will be done soon, because it's a review about something that I knew I'd want to make a video on the second it was announced. But with all that out of the way, hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, a like and a subscription is more than enough. Commenting is a lot of effort, and we both know the bell is broken, so I'm not gonna berate you about that. So with all that said, have a good day, and I'll see you in another one.